I did a small post on this yesterday. I didn't have time to make a video on it, but this is the biggest news globally. Understand that this is the biggest news that is occurring globally because of what it does. And I want to point out that none of these Trump prophets had a prophetic word on this X date, what they're specifically calling an X date. And you can see this was May the 26th, 2023. So they have named this, and this was not a foreseeable thing, and especially not considering what they're calling it. They have specifically named this the X date, very specifically. None of the Trump prophets gave a prophetic word on this, but this can actually be found on page 45 of my book titled Wormwood. And I put this on page 45. Understand who represents 45 because I was also talking about a bad dawn. Abaddon from Revelation chapter 9:11, and who is responsible about the dark times that are ahead of us. And X, there it is, published more than a year before these events even unfolded and before this was even named, before any of this was considered, and how its relationship to a bad dawn who represents 45, because remember, he was the one that approved all these trillions and trillions of dollars in free money that they began printing during the pandemic, as many of you know, where he was meeting with Dr. Fauci before he ever took office. And realize this, so a bad Don who can be found in Revelation chapter 9:11, 45 likes to be called the Don. Specifically, he loves to be called the Don. That is his favorite name. And the reason he likes to be called the Don because of its meaning. It is actually a well-known old term, old name used for people who were in the mob, who were the heads of the mob, but it also means the God Father. Understand the blasphemous nature of that. Don in Old Italian, Old Greek means the God Father. The blasphemous nature of why 45 likes to be called the Don in its relationship to Revelation 9:11. If you break it down, it is a bad Don. If you break it down into three words or into a sentence. So what I want to show you is what they are calling, specifically named, the X date. They have pushed it back. They're trying to push this back as far as they can because they know what's going to happen. What is occurring is America as a whole is about to default on its debt. It's unavoidable, and they know it. They cannot print any more money. Too much money was printed. We were already in debt, and Donald Trump approved too much more money printing into the trillions of dollars during his administration. And now that date to pay that back is coming due. It is only now, this is the lag, what's called the lag time between when a socio-economic policy is implemented and the difference between when it is implemented and the time that it takes the economy to react to such a policy implementation. That is called lag time between policy implementation and its effects on the economy. So now we have reached what they have named the X date. The last time any default in America occurred was with only one state that was part of the Great Depression. It was only one state of Arkansas defaulted on its highway bonds, and see the results, see the rippling effects that it created so many years ago. So many years ago. So, what this is going to create is a rippling effect. And I'm sorry, my Zoom doesn't seem to be working very well here, but this is talking about, this is the major media network PBS talking about what's happening and how something has been ignited, how this will cause markets to freeze up and ignite an international crisis, to ignite an international crisis. Wonder who gave a prophetic word on that. In July 15th of 2021, the fire has been ignited all the way back that far. Ignite an international crisis. But there's also, as it relates to fire, how ignite relates to fire, there is also much more happening. So in this same post, it's speaking of there was going to be a surge of cataclysmic events. In this same post, I don't have it here, but in the same post, it said this is going to ignite an international crisis, and there would be a surge as it relates to water of cataclysmic events. So there was the ignite, and all of you remember all my prophecies about fire and water, to ignite and a surge as it relates to fire and water. All of those prophetic fulfillments coming to pass, and it goes much further than that. I could do prophecy fulfillments every day, but I try to stick to the major ones and the important ones, because it would just be redundant. So that was fire and water. That was also ignite, how a fire has been ignited. And look at what also is in the news. What is making the major headlines? Echo. Are we seeing echo again? We're seeing echo. That's making all the headlines. How this echoing effect. Did any of the Trump prophets give a prophecy on that? Did any of them give a prophecy? And actually, my prophecy goes back further than this, but this is May 3rd of 2022. Echo, that demon echo, and everything I taught. The rippling and echoing of the waters. Remember, the waters represent the peoples, nations, multitudes, and tongues found in Revelation chapter 17-15. This echo is being echoed on all the major media platforms, and none of the Trump prophets had anything to say about any of these things. But also, just as I said, all the prophecy also gave about the troubled waters that lie ahead, and also the rippling effects that this is gonna cause. Because when America defaults and that X date happens, it will have rippling effects, rippling consequences. And it was published in books that I had written. The dark times that are ahead and the X that was coming. None of the false prophets, Trump prophets, saw this, but I get it with specificity and accuracy like they could only dream of and imagine having. That is what being a prophet of God is. God is perfect in his word, even though I've had to be very creative in the manner of which I give my prophecies. But that also shows the omnipotence of God, that he shows me how to be creative so they can't quite figure out exactly what to say when they steal my prophecies. He still gives me the manner to show that he is speaking to me. There's the X. There's the dark times that lay ahead. Everything that I'd showed. There's the X. That was a small default that occurred with the Great Depression. And notice the rippling effects that occurred with it. And the fire that ignited that will cause a surge as it relates to fire and water of cataclysmic events worldwide, because it has global implications. Understand that the fire has been ignited. It was all prophesied by a true prophet. By a true prophet, not ambiguous, vain janglings that these false Trump prophets like Timothy Dixon and Hank Kunneman and Robin Bullock and all these other frauds do. Nothing ambiguous. Fire that has been ignited and the surge of cataclysmic events as it pertains to waters. And the echoing effect that is happening in these days, the rippling effects that it's going to have, and echoing of the waters. None of these Trump prophets have a clue. All they have is vain janglings. Timothy's probably the worst of them all. Oh, there's going to be a shaking and a whirlwind and a great move of God. Timothy hasn't a clue of what prophecy truly is, nor does Robin Bullock or Hank Kunneman or Kent Christmas or any of these clowns running around. God's prophet is specific, word specific, because just as John 1 verse 1 states, God is the word. So his prophet is going to have very, very specific word, not vague, ambiguous wording like there's going to be a shaking or a great whirlwind or a move of God. That's not prophecy. That is not prophecy. That's called prophecy speak. That is what gypsies are taught, these fortune tellers, to give vague and ambiguous forecast of things to come. But see, mine are specific, very specific wording. God bless.